The obsidian throne room hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 1,000 warships preparing for conquest. High Imperator Vorak, the Unbroken, towered over his war council, his chiton, plated bulk casting jagged shadows across the floating holograms of conquered worlds. The domed chamber smelled of ionized metal and the musk of victorious warriors, a scent that had preceded the fall of 17 species before today. Terra Fe, Vorak rumbled, his triple-jointed fingers tapping the hologram of a blue-green world. It spun lazily between them, its defense grids highlighted in pathetic yellow minimal coverage, no orbital platforms, nothing but a few primitive satellites. Our next target. Admiral Vorak clicked his mandibles in amusement, his segmented armor shifting as he leaned forward. By the void, look at them. No natural armor, no plasma glands, not even reinforced skeletal structures. His claw tapped the footage of human cities, flimsy towers of glass and steel, crowded with soft-bodied mammals. They still use wheels on their ground vehicles. Zithari Admiral Kelshan scrolled through tactical data on her wrist display, her bioluminescent nodes flickering with disdain. Their most advanced weapons are chemical explosives. They haven't even unified under a single planetary banner, fractured into squabbling factions. She snorted, a wet sound from her respiratory vents. This will be a cleansing, not a war. The War Council erupted in grating laughter, the sound echoing off the obsidian walls. Only Scholar Tix remained silent, his 4 eyes darting between the hologram and his data slate, his carapace dull gray compared to the vibrant battle. Armor of the others seemed to shrink under their mirth. Vorak silenced them with a raised claw. The Zapirian Cosmic Empire does not waste time on weaklings. But Terra sits at the nexus of 3 hyperlanes. Control it, and we choke the outer systems. His voice dropped to a predatory growl, and after the disgrace at Krelix, the lesser species must remember what happens to those who defy us. Six's voice was barely a whisper. My Imperator, the archives. Vorak's head snapped toward him, his ocular ridges flaring crimson. Speak, Scholar, before I decide your carapace would look better as my footstool. Six swallowed hard, his manipulator limbs trembling as he pulled up a fragmented hologram. Ancient glyphs, half eroded by time, the precursor warnings. They labeled Terra the graveyard of empires. Their last records speak of something buried there. Vorak let out a derisive hiss. Superstitious nonsense. The precursors feared their own shadows. He flicked a claw through the hologram, scattering the glyphs. They're extinct. We are not. Vorak studied the dissolving symbols, then turned back to Earth's image. A graveyard implies something died there. His mandibles spread in a slow, vicious grin. Let us see if these humans can even bleed before we break them. The War Council erupted in approval, their battle cries shaking the throne room. Outside the arched viewports, the Zapirian armada stretched into the void. Thousands of ships, their plasma drives flaring like a swarm of vengeful stars. Vorak raised his scythe, claw, and the hologram of Earth shattered into pixels. Set course for Sol, burn their cities, salt their oceans, and when the last human kneels, his eyes burned like dying suns. Then well see if their graveyard has room for one more corpse. The War Council's laughter still echoed through the obsidian throne room as the Kelshan scholar hesitated near the doorway. His 4-fingered hands trembled around the ancient data crystal. The others had already dismissed him. Just another relic, keeper from the archives, unworthy of the Imperator's attention. But the glyphs burned in his memory. You're blocking the glow panels, Vectal, growled Admiral Vorak, his chitinous face plates shifting in irritation. The massive Zapirian didn't even turn from the hologram of Earth. Vectal's throat sac pulsed. My lords, I must... Unless you've found more human weaknesses to mock, interrupted Zithari Admiral Kess, her bioluminescent stripes flashing amusement. Save it for the archivists. The scholar took a step forward, the crystal's edges biting into his palm. The precursor warnings, my Imperator, they speak of Terra. A hush fell over the chamber. High Imperator Vorak, the Unbroken, turned slowly, his 6 eyes narrowing. The dead race's ramblings? His voice dripped with disdain, but he gestured. Show me. Vektal hurried to the central holoprojector, replacing Earth's image with the cracked crystal's data. Flickering glyphs materialized, ancient, jagged script that predated the Zapirian Empire by millennia. Here, Vektal pointed to a cluster of symbols that pulsed blood, red. The translation is imperfect, but the recurring motif is clear. They called it the Graveyard of Empires. Kess snorted, her dorsal spines rattling. Superstitious nonsense. The Precursors feared stellar winds and comet tails. But Vorak was silent, studying the glyphs. A new hologram resolved, blurry footage of ruined ships orbiting a blue-green world. Younger, less continents, but unmistakably Earth. That is impossible, Vorak hissed. No records exist of the 5th expansion fleet, Vektal whispered. Lost 30,000 cycles ago. The Precursors sent 12 world ships to Terra. None returned. The hologram shifted again, showing massive orbital wreckage, not human designs, not even Zapirian. Something older, something terrifying. Vorak's mandibles clicked once. Coincidence. The Precursors fell to civil war, not some soft-skinned primates. My Imperator, Vektal pressed. The glyphs warn of a sleeping guardian on Terra. Enough. Vorak's fist slammed the throne arm, cracking the obsidian. You waste my time with dead legends while live prey awaits. He gestured, and 2 armored guards seized the scholar. The humans still fight with chemical explosives. Their greatest warship couldn't scratch the Worldbreaker's paint. Vektal struggled as they dragged him toward the doors. The glyphs say their weakness is the trap. The doors sealed behind him, cutting off his warning. Inside the chamber, Kess chuckled. Imagine being afraid of creatures that die if you drop them from 3 spans high. Vorak activated the Earth hologram again, zooming in on a human city. Look at them. No natural armor, no plasma immunity. They haven't even unified under one banner. Vorak rose, his armored carapace glinting. We depart in 3 cycles. Let the Precursors keep their ghosts. His voice dropped to a growl. The Zapirian Empire feasts on reality. As the War Council dispersed, none noticed the hologram's final flicker. A single Precursor glyph hovering over Earth's image. The translation would have chilled them. Here lies the answer to the oldest question. Why do empires fall? The projection died just as the Worldbreaker's plasma lances powered up in the docking bays. The alarms blared through Lunar Command Station Artemis. Faye, a Sound Admiral Lisa Hayes had hoped she'd never hear outside of drills. The station's dim blue lighting flickered as emergency protocols activated, casting long shadows across the cramped command center. Hayes' fingers flew over the holographic display, pulling up sensor data that made her stomach drop. Confirm those readings, she snapped at the young lieutenant beside her. The lieutenant's hands shook as he adjusted the scanners. It's confirmed, Admiral. Multiple signatures, thousands of them, crossing the Kuiper Belt. They'll be in Earth's orbit in 6 hours. Hayes exhaled through her teeth. 6 hours. The United Earth Space Navy had 1 carrier, a handful of frigates, and a stockpile of nukes that hadn't been updated since the last century. The doors hissed open, and Captain Ryan Blake strode in, his boots thudding against the metal grating. His scarred face was grim, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. Heard the news, he said, voice rough. Zapirians. Hayes nodded. Their entire damned armada, the Worldbreakers leading the charge. Blake's jaw tightened. Had seen the intelligence reports. The Zapirian dreadnought was a monster, a ship capable of glassing planets, and it was heading straight for Earth. Dr. Eli Vance burst into the room next, his lab coat flapping behind him. The balding scientist's glasses were askew, his face flushed. "Admiral, you need to see this." "Not now, Doctor." Hayes cut him off. "We've got an extinction level event heading our way." Vance grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "That's exactly why you need to listen. Teresa reason Earth's still standing after all these millennia." Blake raised an eyebrow. "You got some secret weapons stashed away, Doc?" Vance's eyes gleamed. "Not mine, theirs." Hayes frowned. "Whose?" "The Precursors." The word hung in the air like a detonation countdown. Vance pulled up a hologram, an ancient schematic of something buried deep beneath Mount Kilimanjaro. "Project Lazarus. They left it here for us." Blake snorted. "You're telling me we've got some magic button under a mountain that'll save us?" Vance's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not magic. Weapons. Ones that make our nukes look like firecrackers." Hayes stared at the schematics. The design was alien, sleek and brutal, covered in markings no human linguist had ever deciphered. "And you're just telling us this now?" Vance spread his hands. "No one ever asked. The project's been buried since before the first moon landing. The Precursors warned us not to wake it unless we had no other choice." Blake finished, his voice hollow. He looked at Hayes. "We're out of choices, Admiral." Outside the station's viewports, the distant pinpricks of stars were blotted out by the approaching shadow of the Zapirian fleet. Hayes made her decision. "Get me a secure line to Earth Command," she ordered, "and prep a dropship. If we're going down, we're taking their arrogance with us." Blake cracked his knuckles. "About time we showed them why Earth's still here." Vance adjusted his glasses, his hands steady for the first time since the alarms had sounded. "Let's wake the giants." The first plasma lance struck Earth's orbital defense grid like a hammer through glass. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched from Lunar Command as the Zapirian dreadnought Worldbreaker unleashed its fury. The holographic display flickered, red warning symbols blooming like blood in water. "Shields at 12%, shouted a technician, his voice cracking. "They're targeting the Beijing next." The feed cut to static as the USN Beijing, Earth's last orbital cruiser, vanished in a flash of violet fire. Captain Ryan Blake's voice crackled over the comms. "Defiance engaging. Someone get me a firing solution." His ship, the USN Defiance, banked hard, a lone wolf against a pack of Zapirian destroyers. The Defiance's railguns spat tungsten slugs, punching holes through alien hulls. For a moment, it almost looked like they had a chance. Then, the Worldbreaker turned its gaze on them. Blake's hands clenched around the armrests of his command chair. "Evasive maneuvers now." The plasma lance missed the Defiance by less than a kilometer. The shockwave rattled the ship, sending crewmen tumbling. Alarms wailed as the hull integrity warning flashed crimson. "Direct hit on Deck 4, yelled Ensign Carter. "Life support failing." Blake didn't need the report. He could feel the ship dying around him. The groans of stressed metal, the acrid scent of burning circuits. On the view screen, Earth burned. New York first. A single lance from the Worldbreaker split the sky, carving a molten scar through Manhattan. The Statue of Liberty's silhouette vanished in the firestorm. Then Shanghai, then Moscow. Vorak's face appeared on every screen, his chitinous features twisted in triumph. "Surrender," he commanded, his voice like grinding stone. "Or we glass your planet." Blake's comm crackled again. It was Vance, his voice frantic. "Ryan, listen to me. We have to activate Lazarus. It's our only shot." Blake wiped blood from his brow. "Doc, we don't even know if it works." Another impact rocked the Defiance. The lights flickered, then died. Emergency bathed the bridge in sickly red. "Captain," whispered Carter, staring at the tactical display. "They're moving into position." The Worldbreaker's main cannon glowed, charging for the killing blow. Blake closed his eyes for a second. He saw his daughter's face. Then he opened them again. "Vance," he growled. "Do it." Across the solar system, the Zapirian fleet advanced, their weapons hot, their victory assured. They never saw the signal pulse from Kilimanjaro. They never saw the graves begin to open. The alarms blared through the ruined corridors of the Defiance, red emergency lights casting long shadows across Blake's blood-streaked face. He dragged himself up from the deck, his ribs screaming with every breath. The bridge was a graveyard of sparking consoles and dead crew. Outside the shattered viewport, the Zapirian fleet filled the sky like a swarm of locusts, their plasma lances carving through what was left of Earth's defenses. Vance's voice crackled over the dying comms. "Captain, if you can hear me, get to Kilimanjaro, now." Blake coughed, tasting copper. "We're dead in the void. Dock engines are slag." "Doesn't matter," Vance hissed. "Just get there. Project Lazarus isn't a weapon. It's a key." The dropship tore through the atmosphere, trailing fire. Blake gripped the restraints as the hull groaned, heat shields peeling away. Below, the African continent burned. Shanghai was already a crater. New York's skyline had collapsed into the sea. The Worldbreaker's shadow loomed over the planet, its belly glowing with the next volley. "Why the hell are we landing here?" Blake snarled as the ship skidded to a halt in the jungle. Vance didn't answer. He was already running, his lab coat flapping behind him like a surrender flag. Blake followed, pulse rifle in hand, expecting Zapirian shock troops to burst from the trees. Instead, they reached a sheer cliff face, and Vance pressed his palm against the rock. The mountain moved. Stone slid aside with a groan older than civilizations, revealing a tunnel lined with black metal. The air inside smelled of ozone and something older, something wrong. "Doc," Blake whispered, "what the hell is this?" Vance's glasses reflected the dim light as he turned. The Precursors didn't leave warnings about Earth because they feared us. They feared what would wake up. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of forgotten tech, and at its center, God Almighty, Blake breathed. 12 figures stood frozen in stasis, each 3 times the height of a man. Their armored forms were pitted with age, vines snaking through their joints, rust eating at their edges. They looked like statues, until the first one moved, a single red eye ignited in the darkness. Activation sequence complete. A voice boomed, shaking dust from the ceiling. "Directive, protect the Gravekeepers." Blake stumbled back as the nearest machine took a step forward, its foot cracking the stone floor. "Gravekeepers?" Vance's grin was all teeth. "Not us, them." He pointed up through the mountain toward the Zapirian fleet. "Every empire that ever came here died. We just inherited the tools." Above Earth, the Worldbreaker's guns charged for the killing blow. Then the sky ripped open. 12 streaks of fire erupted from Kilimanjaro, punching through clouds, through the stratosphere, through the Zapirian formation like bullets through paper. The lead mech, designation Lazarus, Faye, latched onto a dreadnought's hull and tore. Metal screamed. Atmosphere vented in a geyser of dying crew. On the Defiance's wrecked bridge, the surviving crew watched their screens in disbelief. The ship's AI suddenly flared to life, voice glitching with something like laughter. "Nanite reconstruction initiated," it announced. The broken hull plates began to move, crawling over each other like living things. The engines reignited, not repaired, but reforged, their exhaust now burning an eerie blue. Blake's comms crackled. It wasn't Vance this time. It was Lazarus, Faye Captain Blake. It rumbled, the voice of something ancient wearing human words. "Your vessel is now under Gravekeeper protocols. Would you like to hunt?" Outside, the Zapirian fleet was scattering, their formation collapsing as the mechs ripped through them. Vorak's face appeared on every screen, his mandibles slack with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. Blake leaned into the comm, blood dripping from his grin. "You came for a weak species. You found the reason the Precursors died." The Defiance's new guns, their guns now locked onto the Worldbreaker. "Open fire." Static filled the bridge of the USN Defiance as the ship's rebuilt comm systems flared to life. Captain Ryan Blake wiped blood from his brow, his fingers leaving crimson streaks across the cracked console. The Defiance shouldn't have been spaceworthy, not after taking 3 direct hits from the Worldbreaker's plasma lances. Yet, here she floated, her shattered hull plates knitting themselves back together with shimmering nanites, her weapons systems humming with unfamiliar energy. "All channels open, Captain," Comms Officer Chen reported, her voice tight with pain from a broken rib. "Every frequency from Luna to Mars." Blake nodded, straightening his torn uniform. The view screen showed the burning remains of Earth's orbital defenses, the Zapirian armada looming like a swarm of locusts. He pressed the transmit button. "Attention, Zapirian Empire." His voice echoed through the ruined bridge, amplified 1,000-fold across the solar system. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. You wanted our surrender. Here is our answer." On the main screen, High Imperator Vorac's face appeared, his chitinous features twisting in amusement. "Brave words from a dying species. Your pitiful fleet is dust. Your cities burn. What possible?" "You think we're weak because we look weak," Blake interrupted, his voice dropping to a growl. "Because we don't have claws or armor plating? Let me tell you something about humanity, Vorak." Behind Blake, the Defiance's new systems flared to life, strange hybrid tech fusing human engineering with stolen Zapirian designs. The ship trembled as its rebuilt cannons powered up. "Earth's been killing empires since we crawled out of caves," Blake continued. "We toppled Rome, crushed the Third Reich, buried the Soviet Union, and we did it all with nothing but flesh, bone, and sheer stubbornness." Vorak's mandibles twitched. "Ancient history. Your primitive conflicts mean nothing too. Then how about recent history?" Blake's grin was feral. "The Precursors left their warnings for a reason. Not to protect us from you, to protect you from us." The view screen split, showing live feeds from across the solar system. On Mars, the buried war machines of Project Lazarus tore through Zapirian landing parties, their rusted hulls shrugging off plasma fire. Near Jupiter, 3 human destroyers, thought destroyed minutes earlier, emerged from radiation clouds, their rebuilt hulls gleaming with alien alloys. Dr. Vance's voice crackled over the comm. "Activation sequence complete, Captain. All Lazarus units online." Blake never took his eyes off Vorak. "You came here thinking you'd found easy prey. Instead, you woke the one thing the galaxy should fear most, a cornered human race with nothing left to lose." The Defiance's weapons locked onto the Worldbreaker. Across Earth's scorched surface, 1,000 missile silos opened. Their payloads no longer simple nuclear warheads, but something older, something darker. "Final warning, Vorak," Blake said, his voice cold. "Turn your fleet around, run back to whatever hole you crawled from, or become another name on humanity's long list of fallen empires." For the first time since the invasion began, uncertainty flickered across the High Imperator's face. His claws twitched toward the disconnect control. Blake leaned closer to the camera. "Choose quickly. We're done talking." The transmission cut. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of alien power cores. Chen exhaled sharply. "Think he'll listen." Blake watched the tactical display as hundreds of human ships, rebuilt, upgraded, angry, took formation around the Defiance. "Doesn't matter either way," he said, flexing his newly augmented hand. The nanites had repaired his broken fingers, but left them gleaming silver. "Let them come." The Defiant shuddered as its new armor absorbed another plasma volley. Blake gripped the command console, watching through the view screen as the Worldbreaker's guns charged again. "Vance," he growled into the comm. "You said these upgrades would hold." "Technically, I said probably." Vance's voice crackled back. "The Precursor nano. Tech is still adapting to... Oh hell, incoming." The Dreadnought's main cannon fired. A beam of white, hot plasma lanced toward them, then split apart like water hitting glass as the Defiance's new energy shields flared to life. Across the bridge, Lieutenant whooped. "Did we just..." "Yeah," Blake said, teeth bared in something between a grin and a snarl. Now let's return the favor. All batteries fire. The Defiance's railguns, once pitiful kinetics, now glowed with stolen Zapirian plasma tech. They tore into the Worldbreaker's flank, punching through armor that had never known a scratch. Vorak warriors screamed as their own weapons turned against them, their perfect formation collapsing into chaos. Outside, the Lazarus mechs moved, ancient, rusted giants covered in vines and moss, their eyes now burning red. One seized a Zapirian frigate in massive claws and ripped it in half, spilling crew and atmosphere into the void. Another stomped through a squadron of fighters, their plasma bolts bouncing harmlessly off its resurrected armor. On the Worldbreaker's bridge, Vorak the Unbroken watched his screens flicker with damage reports. His mandibles twitched. Impossible, these are humans. His sensor officer turned, eye stalks trembling. Imperator, they're ships, they're learning. Blake saw it too. Every hit the Defiance took made its shields stronger. Every Zapirian weapon that fired was analyzed, adapted to, then thrown back twice as hard. Vance's voice came through the comm, giddy with realization. It is not just repairing us, it is evolving. A new alert blared. The Worldbreaker's main cannon was charging again. But this time, targeting Earth. Blake's blood went cold. Full speed ahead. Ram them if you have to. The Defiance lunged forward, its new engines screaming. The Dreadnought's gunners panicked, diverting fire to stop them. Plasma bolts scorched the hull, but the ship held. Closer, closer. Then, impact. The Defiance's reinforced prow smashed through the Worldbreaker's shields like a knife through flesh. Alarms wailed as the two ships locked together, hulls grinding. Blake grabbed the comm. Marines, prepare to board. Vorak staggered as his throne room shook. Around him, his war council scrambled for weapons. Seal the doors, he roared. No. Human sets foot on. The blast doors exploded inward. Captain Ryan Blake stepped through the smoke, his armor humming with stolen Zapirian tech. Behind him, a squad of Marines leveled rifles that crackled with blue energy, weapons that hadn't existed an hour ago. You were right about one thing, Blake said, stepping over a fallen Vorak guard. We are from a cradle. He raised his pistol. But you forgot what comes out of cradles. Outside, the last of the Lazarus mechs tore the Worldbreaker's engines apart. Across Sol system, human ships once outnumbered, outgunned, now hunted the fleeing Zapirian fleet. Vance's voice echoed through the Defiance's comms, broadcasting on all channels. You came for a weak species. Static crackled as the ancient nanotech in his lab pulsed with dormant power. You found the reason the Precursors died. Blake pulled the trigger. Vorak the Unbroken dragged himself through the shattered remains of his command deck. His chitinous armor, once gleaming black, now cracked and oozing green ichor. The Worldbreaker groaned around him, its mighty plasma cores sputtering like dying stars. Through the smoke and sparking consoles, he saw them human soldiers in scorched armor, their weapons trained on him without hesitation. One figure stepped forward. Captain Ryan Blake's face was streaked with blood and soot, his uniform torn where shrapnel had grazed him. The human held no weapon. He didn't need one behind him. The Defiance, now fused with Zapirian tech, its hull shimmering with stolen energy, hovered like a specter over the wreckage. You should be dead, Vorak rasped, his mandibles clicking weakly. Your ships were scrap, your weapons primitive. Blake crouched down, eye level with the fallen warlord. That's the thing about graveyards, he said, voice quiet. The dead don't stay buried. A tremor ran through the Worldbreaker as another section collapsed. Somewhere in the distance, a Vorak warrior screamed as his own plasma rifle overheated in his claws. The Lazarus mechs stalked through the ruins, their ancient frames now thrumming with stolen Zapirian energy, dismantling what remained of the armada. Dr. Vance's voice crackled over Blake's comm. Admiral Hayes is hailing from Lunar Command. The last of their fleet is retreating. What's left of it anyway? Blake didn't take his eyes off Vorak. Tell her to let them go. Vorak's compound. Eyes flickered with something unfamiliar, doubt. You let us attack. A slow, cold smile spread across Blake's face. We needed your tech, your ships, your arrogance. He leaned in. Now we have it. Outside the shattered viewport, the remnants of the Zapirian armada fled in disarray. But it wasn't human ships chasing them. It was their own salvaged dreadnoughts, retrofitted with Lazarus systems, their hulls now bearing the insignia of the United Earth Stellar Navy. Vorak let out a shuddering breath. The glyphs, they weren't warning us about you. Blake stood, turning toward the exit. No, they were begging you to run. As he walked away, Vorak coughed out one last question. What now, human? Blake didn't stop. Now, he said. You go home. You tell your empire what happened here. And then, he glanced back, just once. You wait. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Hayes watched the last Zapirian ships vanish into warp. Her fingers traced the new controls. Smooth, alien metal fused seamlessly with human steel. Status report, she said. All Lazarus units operational, Vance replied, his voice giddy with disbelief. Their tech is integrating faster than we predicted. By next week, we'll have a fleet. Even the core worlds wouldn't dare challenge. Hayes didn't smile. Good, because they'll be coming. Far below on Earth, the fires still burned in some cities, but from the ruins of New York to the shattered domes of Shanghai, something else stirred. Factories that had once built cars and computers now hummed with new purpose. Shipyards expanded, and beneath Kilimanjaro in the dark, something older than Lazarus stirred in its slumber. On every screen across the planet, a single message flashed, prepare. Blake stepped onto the bridge, his reflection glinting in the Defiance's new obsidian panels. Hayes met his gaze. You sure about this? Outside, the hybrid fleet, human and Zapirian, living and ancient, turned as one toward the stars. Blake's answer was simple. Let them come.